You hear that? That faint vibration beneath your feet. Like the earth itself just held its breath for a moment too long. That's not thunder. That's not a passing train. That's him. And if you click this video, chances are you already know who I'm talking about. Or at least you've heard the rumors, the headlines, the shaky phone footage spreading across TikTok and Reddit like wildfire. Some say he's a myth. Others say he's a government weapon gone rogue. But tonight, you're going to hear the real story, not the filtered headlines or the censored live streams. This is raw, uncut, and straight to you. The truth they don't want out. You showed up here for answers. And I promise, if you stick with me till the end of this video, you'll get them. Not the kind that leave you with more questions, but the kind that change the way you look at the world around you. This isn't just another superpowers gone wrong story. This is about purpose, about justice, and about a force so powerful, so relentless, that entire cities have gone dark to try and contain him. Now, before we go any further, let me just talk to you for a second. Yeah, you, the one behind the screen. You didn't just land here by accident. Something drew you in. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that thumbnail that felt a little too real. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a part of you that feels like the story is already happening around you, and you're just now tuning in. This video isn't background noise. This is your front row seat to a turning point. So don't scroll away, don't click out. You'll want to hear this, because once I tell you what happened, you'll realize just how close we all came to never hearing anything again. Okay, deep breath. Let's set the stage. 3 nights ago, in the outskirts of a small Midwestern town that never makes the news, something broke through the sky. No one saw it on radar. No government agency reported an object entering our airspace. But everyone within a 100-mile radius saw the flash, heard the crack in the clouds like glass shattering at the edge of the universe. First responders thought it was a crash. Locals thought it was an earthquake. But it wasn't either. It was a landing. Or maybe an arrival. And he didn't come quietly. Surveillance footage from a gas station caught just 37 seconds of him walking. No. Stalking. Down the highway, untouched by the flames around him, eyes glowing like 2 embers in a dark field of ash. And then, the footage cuts. Every server connected to that feed melted down. Literally, hardware fried. Files corrupted. Cloud backups gone. All that's left is static, and a town with half its buildings blacked out, like someone surgically erased power from specific zip codes. Now, here's where it gets really weird. I spoke to someone who won't go on record, but who used to work with the same shadow agency that's been quietly vacuuming up any trace of this guy. She called him a Hunter-class alpha. Not just superhuman. Not just genetically modified. This guy is part of something way bigger. A network. A mission. And here's the kicker. He doesn't just show up. He tracks. He scans for something or someone. And once he's locked in, there's no hiding, no running, no mercy. He doesn't kill at random. He doesn't destroy for fun. He hunts with purpose. And a question that's got every black site researcher, military strategist, and underground lab tech shaking their boots is, who is he after? Let me slow it down for a second, because this is where you come in. You're not just watching this to be entertained. You're watching this because deep down you want to understand. Maybe you felt something lately. An unease. A shift in the air. You're not paranoid. You're not crazy. The world is changing, and this hunter, he's just the first sign. We're not talking about superheroes anymore. We're talking about survival. Real consequences. Real lives. And someone out there has been marked. It could be a scientist who knows too much. A hacker who tripped over classified files. A whistleblower who disappeared last week from a Denver hospital. Or maybe someone completely unknown. Someone who doesn't even realize they're being hunted yet. But make no mistake, the hunter knows. And here's where it gets darker. Every place he's been tracked to, there's a pattern. Not just destruction, but silence. No witnesses left behind. No footage. Just whispers. People vanish. And the only thing left is a symbol burned into ground, like a warning or maybe a countdown. And tonight, that same symbol appeared again. But this time, it's in the heart of New York. Times Square. Middle of the night. No one saw who left it. But you can bet someone's already covering it up. Deleting tweets. Pulling down footage. Locking down radio signals. That's how you know it's real. And it means the hunter's target is close. Maybe already inside the city. And if that's true, we've got hours. Maybe. So where does that leave us? You, sitting there. Me, telling you a story that's probably already gotten too close to the truth. The hunter isn't here to play games. He doesn't leave second chances. And if you think this is fiction, then I'll just say one thing. Remember this moment. Because when everything starts unfolding, and trust me, you'll think back to this video and realize you heard the truth before anyone else believed it. You'll remember that someone tried to warn you, tried to show you what's really going on behind the screens and headlines. And as for the answer you came here for, who is he after? Well, let's just say the real target isn't who you think. And if you want to know why, then you'll need to keep watching. Because what happens next will make everything you've seen so far feel like the calm before the storm. But here's the twist. As the hunter closes in, there's someone else watching him. Someone we haven't talked about yet. And the moment they cross paths, the real game begins. So stay right where you are. What's coming next? It's not just a plot twist. It's a revelation. And it might just change everything you thought you knew about power, control, and the line between justice and vengeance. The symbol in Times Square wasn't just a flare in the dark. It was a message, a silent declaration written not in words but in fear. Most of the city slept through it, unaware of the significance. But in a secure, nondescript building in Lower Manhattan, one that doesn't show up on Google Maps, a team of specialists was already analyzing every inch of the scorched concrete. They moved fast, sweeping for trace elements, thermal residues, even electromagnetic signatures. One woman stood at the center, arms crossed, watching a holographic scan of the symbol float before her. Dr. Elise Harrow wasn't new to these things. She'd seen what happened in Prague, the scorched alleyway in Taipei, the abandoned metro station in Stockholm, each one left with the same burning insignia. She followed this ghost for nearly a decade, back when he was just an anomaly in a sea of government secrets. Back when he didn't yet have a name. But now, as the pattern repeated on U.S. soil, Elise's instinct screamed something new. He wasn't just hunting. He was escalating. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, buried deep in the snow-cloaked forest of northern Finland, a boy named Kale stumbled across an old journal inside a cabin that hadn't been lived in for over 40 years. The journal was brittle, its pages yellowed, but the language written inside was something his grandfather had always warned him about, a ciphered tongue that was said to be used by a group only whispered about in old hunter myths. As Kale turned the pages, he noticed drawings, symbols that matched what had appeared in Times Square. What troubled him wasn't just that connection, but the fact that he'd seen that exact shape before, in his own dreams, long before the news broke, long before he even knew the hunter existed. Elsewhere, in the dusty underbelly of Los Angeles, a former Black Hat hacker named Zero was streaming live to a limited, encrypted audience of less than 300 people. His stream wasn't indexed by search engines, wasn't shared on Reddit, but it was gaining attention among darknet circles. He wasn't talking about crypto drops or AI manipulation tactics. He was showing glitchy video fragments of a figure walking through fire, untouched, frame by frame. And every time Zero tried to stabilize the image or zoom in on the face, his software would crash. Not freeze, crash. Hardware reboot, emergency shutdown. It was as if something in the footage was fighting back. He had seen corrupted video before. This was different. It was deliberate, alive, almost watching. As he spoke to the stream, his tone wavered. The usual cocky arrogance replaced with rare, honest fear. He told his viewers that this wasn't just a person. They were looking at an evolution, something beyond human. Maybe not alien, but definitely not born like the rest of us. Back in Manhattan, Elise met with her colleague Marcus, a former military strategist turned crypto security analyst. He had theories, of course. Everyone did. But he was convinced the hunter wasn't acting alone, that someone or something was pulling strings behind the scenes, a silent hand guiding his path. Marcus had tracked seismic disturbances around each incident and found that 93% of the hunter's known appearances occurred in areas with ancient underground structures, many predating modern civilization. His latest theory suggested the hunter wasn't just tracking people, but locations, gateways, places where energy converged in unnatural ways, places that were protected. Until now, Elise thought he was reaching, but part of her couldn't dismiss the timing, the synchronicities, the way coincidences seemed to line up too perfectly every time. As the story widened, so did the perspectives. A freelance investigative reporter named Rhea Monroe, based in Atlanta, began connecting the dots between missing children cases across 4 different states. Each one involved a child who claimed to have seen a man made of light, only to vanish days later without a trace. Rhea wasn't the kind to believe in monsters or myths, but the pattern was undeniable. And when she dug into one of the family's smart home devices, she found audio fragments, one in particular, where a child whispers in a hushed voice, "He's watching me from shadows. He knows I'm not from here." The timestamp on the audio matched the exact moment a local power grid failure was reported. No one had linked the two, but Rhea had a hunch. The hunter wasn't just targeting scientists or whistleblowers. He was after something or someone hidden in plain sight, maybe even people who didn't know their true origin. In the backdrop of all this, social media was ablaze. TikTok videos showing glitches in the sky, YouTube channels dedicated to unraveling cryptic codes found in unexpected places, like subway walls, ATM receipts, or even capture images. Reddit exploded with theories. Hunter confirmed in D.C.? Did NASA really go dark, or was it the hunter again? Glitch in NYC livestream prove simulation? It became the most talked about phenomenon online, with hashtags like #HunterTruth, #SymbolWatch, and #HeArrived trending for days. But most people still thought it was part of a viral marketing campaign or some new ARG. What they didn't realize is that the reason all their footage looked fake was because something was scrambling their tech before they could even process what they were seeing. While the world speculated, the hunter moved without pause. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't breathe like the rest of us. His eyes could scan electromagnetic fields, his senses attuned to even the faintest heartbeat behind a 2-foot steel wall. And every target he chose had one thing in common: classified knowledge of something called Project Nexus. No one in the public knew what Nexus was. But deep in a military archive in Nevada, a retired colonel stared at a decrypted document that had been locked since 1987. It described a theoretical energy source tied to human consciousness, capable of creating beings that could transcend space-time limits. The document ended with one sentence, typed in all caps: "If Nexus awakens, the hunter will follow." We're only scratching the surface here. And if you think it's already intense, trust me, the deeper we go, the more you'll realize that everything we thought we knew about physics, about government secrets, about humanity itself, is being rewritten in real time. So stay with me. We're just getting started. Let me know if you want to continue with the next major arc of the story. We've only begun to peel back the layers of the world behind Superhuman Hunter Arrives. Who is he after? And there's so much more to reveal as the story unfolded. The world's perception of the Superhuman Hunter began to shift. No longer was he simply an enigma to be speculated upon. With every new incident, every new sighting, his presence was becoming undeniable. Across the globe, the patterns deepened, and the hunter's movements grew more deliberate. The sense of impending danger wasn't confined to isolated locations anymore. It spread like wildfire, infiltrating every corner of the world's awareness. People no longer questioned whether or not he was real. They asked themselves why he was here and, more chillingly, who he was truly after. The media couldn't get enough. Mainstream news outlets, once dismissive of the hunter as a mere conspiracy theory, now found themselves scrambling to report every new lead, every whispered story, every shred of evidence that seemed to surface in chaos. A mass sighting occurred in Madrid, where hundreds of people saw an enormous shadow cross the skyline during the peak of rush hour. The footage was shaky, nearly incomprehensible, but one detail stood out. Every person who was within a 2-block radius of the shadow experienced a sudden spike in heart rate, their bodies reacting to something unseen. Doctors and scientists across the world debated the phenomenon. Was this psychic event an electromagnetic pulse from an unknown source, or something far more sinister? Rhea Monroe's investigation into the missing children took an unexpected turn when she uncovered a cryptic message buried in the last interview transcript of a child who had vanished from Atlanta. The child's voice had been calm, eerily so, when she spoke of a man, a giant of smoke and fire, she called him, who stood in the corner of her room the night she disappeared. The chilling part? The child had said she was going to join him. For Rhea, the line between myth and reality was blurring in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. As she delved deeper, she began to piece together a connection between the children and the energy signatures reported at each site of the hunter's previous appearances. The hunter wasn't simply targeting individuals. He was recruiting, pulling people into his orbit, drawing them to places where these mysterious energy gates existed. Meanwhile, Kale's discovery of the journal in the northern Finnish cabin became more than just a curious artifact. It was a key to something much larger. The drawings in the journal were remarkably detailed, resembling ancient glyphs, and matched symbols that had appeared in the backgrounds of surveillance footage in the U.S. They weren't random shapes. They were part of a larger, forgotten network of knowledge, a knowledge buried by time but never fully erased. Kale's connection to the symbols was undeniable now. As he studied them, strange things began happening around him. His dreams grew more vivid, his instincts sharper, and he began to feel the presence of someone or something watching him. The truth was becoming harder to deny. He wasn't just a passive observer of this mystery. He was part of it, and the more he understood, the more dangerous it became for him to stay in Finland. There were people after him now, people who knew what he had discovered. Elise, the crypto security analyst who had been tracking the hunter's every move, began to suspect that her own life was no longer as safe as she had once believed. Her apartment in Manhattan was broken into, though nothing was stolen. The police dismissed it as a random burglary, but Elise knew better. Her systems had been compromised, and she was being watched. Worse still, she had begun receiving messages. Cryptic, impossible to decipher, but clearly meant for her. At first, they seemed like the ramblings of a conspiracy theorist. But after she managed to decode one of them, the message was clear. You know more than you think. You know where he's going next. Stay away from the gates. She couldn't ignore it. The mention of gates, which Marcus had been theorizing about, confirmed that the hunter's mission wasn't just about eliminating threats. It was about controlling something much greater, something tied to humanity's very existence. In Los Angeles, Zero, the former hacker turned live streamer, started to notice odd patterns in his streams. While he had been trying to uncover more about the hunter's identity, his technology began to malfunction in increasingly bizarre ways. At first, it was simple glitches, freezes, lag, audio cutouts. But then came the strange occurrences, entire frames of video that seemed to warp and distort in unnatural ways. Faces flickered across the screen, faces he hadn't seen before, and in some instances, they were people he recognized, people who had vanished or were reported missing. He began to wonder if the hunter wasn't just affecting technology. Maybe he was messing with the very fabric of reality. Was the footage showing alternate versions of reality, or was it that the hunter had the ability to distort perception itself? As Elise worked tirelessly to connect the dots, she stumbled upon a lead that would change everything. It wasn't just a hunter she had to worry about anymore. There was someone else, someone far more dangerous, pulling strings from the shadows. A powerful cabal, operating out of a network of underground facilities scattered across the world, had been working for decades on a secret program called Nexus. Elise learned that Nexus wasn't just a project. It was a methodology designed to alter human consciousness itself. Those involved in Nexus had begun creating beings who could transcend the physical limitations of the human body and operate in ways beyond normal understanding. This was what the hunter was after. He wasn't a lone agent. He was a product of Nexus, sent to retrieve the most powerful artifacts of the project before they could be activated by the wrong hands. But Elise's discovery was more than just shocking. It was terrifying. The Cabal wasn't just interested in harnessing the energy of the human mind. They were preparing to reshape reality. And with the hunter on the loose, they were getting closer to succeeding than anyone realized. Kale, desperate to find answers, decided to follow the trail left by his grandfather's journal. It led him to a hidden complex deep within the Arctic Circle, where an abandoned facility from the Cold War era stood. Inside, he found not just relics of the past, but something far more disturbing. The facility had once been the center of a secret experiment to harness human psychic abilities, and the walls were covered in the same symbols Kale had found in the journal. But the most shocking discovery came when he accessed the central databanks. There, encrypted but accessible, was a file titled Project Nexus, Final Phase. The file contained a blueprint for a device, one that could alter human consciousness and connect it to something much larger, something cosmic. As Kale began to understand what he was looking at, he realized that the Hunter wasn't just a force sent to eliminate threats. He was the first successful prototype of Nexus. Rhea, meanwhile, started connecting more dots between the missing children and the mysterious power sources that had been reported across the globe. The missing children, all of whom had been last seen near these locations, were not random victims. They were part of a much larger plan, one that had been set in motion long before the world realized the stakes. And the more Rhea dug into the records, the more she found herself in danger. She was being followed, her every move watched. But Rhea wasn't about to stop. She couldn't. The truth was out there. It was closer than anyone could have imagined. As all these pieces fell into place, one horrifying truth became undeniable. The Hunter wasn't just after individuals. He was after something much more valuable. He was hunting the key to unlocking humanity's next evolution. The only question left was whether or not anyone could stop him before it was too late. But the twist, the one no one saw coming, was yet to be revealed. The real enemy was not the Hunter, but the forces that had created him. And those forces were about to make their move. The real battle was only just beginning. The pieces of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. But with every answer, more questions arose. The stakes had never been higher. The superhuman hunter's motives, once a mystery, were now frighteningly clear. He was after a key that would unlock humanity's next evolutionary step. But there was something deeper, something even darker at the heart of his mission, something that no one had anticipated. The global threat had grown to a level where it felt like the world was teetering on the edge of an irreversible shift. Kale, Rhea, Elise, and the others had all become key players in a game that was much older than any of them could have imagined. They had discovered Nexus, and in doing so, had awakened forces they were not prepared to face. In the cold expanse of the Arctic Circle, Kale stood at the entrance to the abandoned facility. The weight of everything he had uncovered so far crashed down on him. The journal had led him here, but it was no longer just about the past. The truth he had stumbled upon was staring him in the face. The device in the database wasn't some theoretical concept. It was real, and its construction had begun long before the Hunter ever made his first appearance. The implications were staggering. Whoever controlled the Nexus device would hold the power to rewrite the very fabric of reality. It wasn't just about psychic abilities or human evolution. It was about control. Control over the future of humanity, over the world itself. But the real shock came when Kale found the final blueprint for the device. As he deciphered the encrypted data, he realized that it wasn't just a machine, it was a network. The Hunter wasn't working alone. The cabal that had created him, the secret society behind Nexus, was far more powerful and widespread than anyone had realized. They were orchestrating this from the shadows, manipulating everything, including the Hunter, to ensure completion of their vision. Kale's discovery of the facility wasn't an accident. He had been drawn here, just as Rhea and Elise had been drawn into the mystery. The world had been set up for a grand reset, and all the players were in place. Meanwhile, Elise was racing against time. Her deep dive into the Cabal's operations had uncovered something even more terrifying. The Nexus project wasn't just about changing humanity. It was about crossing dimensions. The device they were building could open a rift, connecting this world to another, a darker, more chaotic dimension where the laws of nature didn't apply. The energy signatures that had been appearing around the globe weren't random. They were the signs of a rupture, a tear between dimensions. The Hunter, as she now understood, was a guide. His mission wasn't just about finding the key. It was about making sure that the rift was opened. He was leading them to the final point of convergence, where the world would collide, and the Cabal's plan would come to fruition. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The team had to act fast, but even as they plotted their next move, they realized how little control they had over the situation. The Cabal was everywhere, and their influence had already spread too far. In cities across the globe, the Nexus device was being activated in secret locations, sending shockwaves through reality itself. The Hunter, now fully aware of the players who had gathered against him, began to close in on them one by one, using his superhuman abilities to track them down. Rhea was the first to be targeted. Alone in her office, sifting through old records and surveillance footage of the missing children, she felt a presence behind her. She spun around just in time to see a figure shrouded in smoke and fire, his form shifting and warping like a mirage. It was him, the Hunter. Her heart raced as she reached for the phone to call for help, but her hands trembled so violently that the phone slipped from her grasp. He didn't speak, but his eyes, burning with an intensity that seemed to cut through her very soul, said everything she needed to know. She had been found. The final confrontation was upon them. Kale, meanwhile, had a chance encounter with someone he never expected to meet. The old man who had been his guide to the cryptic journal. The man who had vanished so many years ago appeared in the facility, but this was no reunion. The man wasn't the same. His eyes were vacant, as if something had taken his very essence. He was part of the Cabal. Kale realized a pawn in their scheme. His role was to protect the Nexus device and ensure that no one interfered with its activation. But Kale couldn't let this happen. He had come too far, uncovered too much, and seen too much destruction. He had to stop them. As the tension reached its peak, Elise made a shocking discovery. She had traced Cabal's communications and found their ultimate weapon. It wasn't the Nexus device itself that would bring about the end. It was the energy that powered it, the energy that had been harnessed from the very fabric of reality. The Cabal's plan was simple: to destroy the barrier between dimensions, to let the forces of chaos flood into their world and reset everything. The Hunter, despite being an agent of the Cabal, had developed his own agenda. He didn't want to destroy the world. He wanted to escape it. He had seen the power of the rift, and he believed that only by crossing it could he transcend his limitations. In a twist no one saw coming, the Hunter turned on the Cabal. As the activation of the Nexus device reached its final phase, he intervened, destroying the core and setting the entire facility ablaze. But it wasn't out of altruism. It was his final move to ensure his escape. The blast that destroyed the facility also triggered a wave of energy that consumed the entire area, warping reality and sending shockwaves across the globe. For a brief moment, it seemed like the world itself might fracture, but then, as quickly as it had come, the rift closed. In the aftermath, the team found themselves in a world that was eerily unchanged, but something was different. The veil between dimensions had thinned, and there were whispers of strange occurrences happening all around the world. Things that couldn't be explained, things that seemed to suggest that the fabric of reality had been permanently altered. The Cabal had been destroyed, but their plan had succeeded in ways no one fully understood. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The world was on the edge of something new, something beyond human comprehension. And the Superhuman Hunter? His fate remained a mystery. Some believe he had escaped through the rift, while others thought he had perished in the blast. But the truth was far more complicated. In the chaos of the explosion, the Hunter had vanished, leaving only the remains of a shattered world in his wake. No one knew where he had gone, or if he had even survived. But one thing was certain: the world would never be the same again. As the team reflected on their journey, they realized that their fight wasn't just about stopping an apocalyptic event. It was about the strength of human resilience, the ability to face the unknown and fight for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against them. They had learned that sometimes the greatest battles aren't won through strength alone, but through the power of determination, unity, and the belief that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.